Spirit of God within you, guiding, protecting, and prospering you always. Yes, yes. And in the Christmas season, I do want to give thanks to Kathleen DeMagenet because she ended up doing all the decorating here for us all by herself. And it's beautiful. And she's going to be calling on all of you to help take it down after the season. If you miss the opportunity to set up, you'll have the opportunity. Also, for those of you who went to the Nativity in Noel that was at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, where Denise sang and Michael played the cello, it was a fabulous time, and they represented us so beautifully. It was really a packed house. I'm sure there were several hundred people there. How many? 650 people. Yeah, and it was a beautiful affair. So we give thanks for that. So we've had the Festival of Lights. We've had Nativity and Noel. We have all of our decorations here. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Okay. So speaking of that, the lingerie store was very crowded with shoppers men shoppers shopping for holiday gifts for their wives. And so a young businessman came to the register and he had this beautiful lacy black negligee. And the clerk noticed that the next customer behind the businessman was an elderly farmer, and he was holding a red flannel nightgown. But he kept glancing at the young man holding the black lacy negligee. So the young guy paid and went off, and the farmer stepped up to the counter, and he said, when it was his turn, he said he placed the nightgown on the counter, and he asked, "Would you have this in black flannel?" Ladies, we know those men, don't we? Would you have this in black flannel? Yeah. All right. So Christmas in the Heart Awakening. Christmas is the anthology, probably the greatest gathering of traditions and stories of any human event, isn't it? It draws together thousands of years of traditions and stories and customs and folklore and spiritual awakenings and aspirations, religious beliefs, all of it, for many people from all nations, from all over the world. And it's a story that truly belongs to humankind. It's the birth, we say in our Christian faith, it's the birth of the universal Christ consciousness on earth, but it's also a personal story. It's the birth, the greater awakening of that Christ consciousness, that Christ spirit that's in each one of us. The second coming of Christ will not be the return of an avatar or a person, but will be the birth of the universal Christ consciousness in millions of people who have realized, as the historical Jesus did, the journey into unconditional love. But that awakening consciousness, and for some people it's Buddha, Allah, Krishna, Wankantan, Great Spirit, higher power, whatever. There's an awakening of this, which in unity we call the universal Christ consciousness, the Spirit of God within us. And it's happening on a global scale now, because you can see it on your newsreel every night, right? People everywhere are honoring the sacred worth in every human being. And when we're birthing something like that, awakening to something new, birth can be messy, right? The labor process is, when we're laboring out something new and wonderful, it can be messy, right? My former neighbor, God bless her, she's amazing. She was this pregnant with her third child. She sent me a picture. She was due in November, and so we were texting because she lives in Wheatland now. And I says, "Any baby yet?" And so she finally sent me a picture of this little boy. And when she had her last baby, it was during COVID, so they decided not to go to the hospital. She hired a midwife, and in a little swimming pool in her living room, she gave birth to her second son. So now here comes the third one. And I said, "Any baby yet?" And her husband's become a fireman. And she says, "Yeah, the birth was wild." She said, she texted me, "The birth was wild. I didn't think I was as close as I was. Ha, ha, ha. So Matt delivered the baby and the kids watched." And she said, and the midwife showed up 45 minutes later. I just went, oh my God. How did I get onto that? The fruits of our labor. That we're birthing this whole universal Christ consciousness in the universe. There is this light that's trying to be born and trying to come, and it's happening in every one of us on a personal level, but it is happening on a global level, and we should be excited about it, and we can't judge by appearances that things look messy. Things look messy and the labor is hard, but the fruits of our labor is going to be a planet that's transformed into divine love, isn't it? Isn't it? And every one of us has a responsibility to participate in that evolutionary leap that's taking place right now. We're part of an evolutionary leap on the planet. Can you believe it? Isn't it exciting to think? So this Christmas season, over the next 4 weeks of Advent, I want to take us through the stages of birthing that Christ consciousness within us. And there are lots of stages and ways that it happens, but I've put together 3 for our series. Today is Awakening, Christmas in the Heart Awakening. Next week is Illumination, as we look at the blending and the union of the masculine and the divine masculine and feminine in Joseph and Mary. And then on Christmas Eve morning, the 24th, it'll be birthing. So we have 3 stages. And in this first Sunday of Advent, we look at the awakening of faith and hope. But first, a little story about hope that I'm sure you can all relate to. Think back on your early Christmases. It was one year I recall my brother and I asked for what we considered to be the most prized possession of all. And that was an electric train set. And I mean, it had everything, right? It had smoke that really came out of the engine, and it had noise, and it had bells, and it had whistles, and everything that 2 elementary school children could want. And we hoped for that, and hoped for that. And then I also remember how tough things were financially for my mom and dad. My dad had had cancer for 2 years in the old days when, they called it the, what did they call it? Puke, burn, and something, where they radiate you, chemo makes you throw up, and heart and surgery. Puke, burn, and cut. So they'd done surgery, they did the radiation. He was deathly sick, and he was off work for almost 2 years. And he was sole support of our family. Mom didn't work outside the home, and so she baked banana bread to sell at festivals. She did alterations, and she took in 3 children to babysit from 6 in the morning till 6 at night while she cared for my dad. So there's a good work ethic in my family, right? So we knew things were tough, but we were young. And it's just like, God bless parents that shelter their children from feeling the I don't want to say the desperation of the circumstances, but connecting with anything but love, to connect with anything but love. And my brother and I didn't really understand the financial woes at that time, but we hoped and wished for that train set. And every night when we talked excitedly about putting it together and having our friends over and playing with it and how great it was going to be, and I had faith that Santa would hear me. But every night when I did my prayers, I also reminded God of how much faith I had. And that I had faith that my dad would be healed, and faith that Santa would do his job. So when we woke up on Christmas morning and we saw this giant box with our names on it, it was just, I had never felt so loved and so affirmed and so able to create the circumstances of, to use faith and hope to create the circumstances of my life. Now, while I'm older, the echoes of that Christmas is still in me. It doesn't show up as unfettered excitement. I'm not looking for a pony any longer. That was my next year's gift. I wanted a horse, but that didn't work out. But there's still an inexhaustible sense of wonder about the season, and it's present as I become more and more connected to the Christ within me. And I see the operation of that spirit in my life and in the lives of every one of you, in the lives of this community. As a child, anticipating that train set occupied all of my thoughts. Today, my thoughts are open to receiving and recreating this unbounded faith to create life and circumstances, now that I'm an adult, to apply it to my adult life. Well, there's a second story this morning, similar to how we create, the mysticism of God is what I want to talk about. Because about, I don't know if it's been a year ago now, Michael Lawson and I decided, we wanted to help young teenagers and youth and create the Youth of Unity. And so we thought, where do we find kids? Well, they're across the street at Placer High School. So we made a little flyer this size, and it said, if you want to be a sound tech, come on over, or text, because we never put a phone number because they don't phone anybody anymore. Text Michael and express your interest. And so one young person responded, and that was Jesse, our sound tech. And he came over and he got trained as a sound tech. And it was interesting when we met, to do the little paperwork to hire him. I said, okay, Jesse, I need your driver's license. And he said, I don't have one. My mom brings me. I said, okay. And they said, we pay you by check. And he says, oh, I don't have a bank account where I can cash that. And he wants to set up his business as an AV person, doing videos and tech stuff and all that. I said, if you're going to be a businessman, then let me help you here. I don't know if you want your driver's license, but you need to get some identity, and you need to take this check down to the bank, and you need to cash it, set up an account, and here's the formula. You live on 70%, you tithe 10%, and you save 20%. You do that your whole life, and you'll be a millionaire, multimillionaire when you retire. That's the formula. So kind of mentoring him. And then Dave Workley, Dave Langley, they were teaching him how to do the audiovisual stuff. He has shown up on time. He's reliable. He's dependable. He's everything you could want in a young person, 16 years old. We were here one Sunday doing a seminar, and it was over with, and he and I were the only ones here, and we didn't know how to shut off the heat. So we're going around in all the closets together, trying to figure out which air conditioners and heaters shut off where. And he stayed with it and stayed with it. So then it comes the question, he's trained, he can come on his own. Do we give him a key? Key to the church. Remember, the church key used to mean something different. But, see, you're old enough to remember that. All right. Anyway, so we said, yeah, he's totally reliable. He gets a key. His mom still drives him over here, but he gets a key, calls when he can't make it, all of that. Well, it turns out Jesse's dad has been pretty sick with heart issues, and he's been in the hospital. And this past week, he passed away. So as I was thinking about that flyer that we walked across the street and put on the bulletin board at Placer High School, and it drew this young man to us, in ways we could never have known. We now have an opportunity to live in our faith as a community, to help nurture and support him through this time in his life. Gentlemen, he's going to need a father image. He's going to need a grandfather image. Ladies, he has a sister. We're going over this afternoon to figure out, exactly what their needs are. But when I called him, he said, they made a flyer, and I put some of them out on the bulletin board because they're selling food to cover the funeral expenses. Wow. Friends. And so this is an opportunity that's dropped right into our community. I was thinking too late this year, we used to buy pajamas and wrap them up in a beautiful ribbon with a tag that says, "You are loved." And we'd put them in the seats, we'd bring them in and leave them in the seats all through the Christmas season and hold them and bless them. And then we worked with the sheriff's department to give them to kids on Christmas. So at night, Christmas morning, you open all your presents, but that night you wear a brand new pair of pajamas that says you're loved, and they've all been blessed. And I thought, oh dang, forgot to do that. We usually do that right before Thanksgiving. I thought, what are we going to do for Christmas? And then we have an opportunity not to do for all pajamas for all the kids, but there's an opportunity in front of us. And I don't have an answer right now of what that's going to look like, but stay tuned, because we have an opportunity to be a faith community. We wanted to expand our church out into the community more, and so Spirit is saying, here you go. And the mystical path of walking a flyer across the street to Placer High School, drawing in someone that wants to create a business for himself, and being able to nurture him in all of that is just a wonderful opportunity. And so we want to bless him and his family, of course, but I want to go on. I believe that most of us who come to Unity are awakening. We come into this vortex of spirit that's known as Unity of Auburn to grow and develop and unfold our greatest yet to be able to tap into the divine and perfect spiritual idea within us as life and peace and love and compassion and all of that. We also come to let go of any places that limit us, don't we? And we come here not only to be inspired by the music and the message and the meditation and the affirmations, but we come here to be willing to be pulled into an atmosphere of love. Get into an atmosphere of unconditional love. And then Spirit very intuitively, wisely, whatever, sees that and presents us with our own opportunities. Awakening, yes, your soul begins to awaken to the truth of God's presence at the core of your being. You know who you are. You know who you are. I heard an interview this morning with John Baptiste, who was the musician on the Stephen Colbert show, and his band Stay Human. And he says, the voice is in you all the time. You can hear it. You just have to listen. And he's creating all this wonderful music. He's won, I think, 7 or 8 Grammys, and now he's nominated for 6 more, because he just downloads from spirit the music. Andrew Harvey says in his book, Son of Man, in awakening, something breaks suddenly into our lives and inspires us, or more likely, upsets us. Upsets the normal pattern of our life. And we have to begin to adjust ourselves to a new kind of existence. This experience may come, he says, through an inspirational experience out in nature, in art, in all of that kind of music like John Baptiste creates. It can come through adventure like flying or mountaineering. I'm going to miss that one, both of those. It may come through falling in love, through some accident, illness, death of a loved one, a sudden loss of fortune. More often, he says, and much more subtly, it comes as a glimpse, often a repeated glimpse, a hunch, an intuitive knowing. Something new comes into our awareness, and this glimpse repeats itself with flashes of insight until somewhere, sometime, the veil is lifted and we recognize this new thing that's preparing to be born in us. Something new preparing to be born in our spiritual community is compassion and love and giving and service. In the Christmas birth stories, it's both Matthew and Luke who use primal energy to illustrate this. Their stories of Jesus' conception and birth affirm that what happened in Jesus' life was not only of the flesh, but also of the spirit. Both stories powerfully express the ancient theme of light coming into the darkness. That's the Advent season, the beginning of the light coming into the darkness. Matthew does it with the star shining as a beacon light to the wise men. Luke does it with the glory of God appearing as light in the night sky with singing angels. But if you think about your own life, your own awakening, and if we think for a moment about Jesse's life right now, he's probably 17 now, I don't know when his birthday is, what this young man is stepping into right now. It says, all of us, many of you, can point to a particular time in your life when all of your structures fell apart. There was a moment when so much was unworkable that the only way that you could remain sane was to evolve. And all you could do was let go, surrender, and yield. And the thing that saved you was that you transformed your life. You allowed yourself to be molded into something new. You became a new creation in Christ. And there was some new energy in you that you'd not known before, that you were brought to a moment when you were able to break free from everything you used to be, from your circumstances, from your life, to become this new thing, this spark of divinity that's growing in you. You weren't the same person as you were just a moment before. Haven't you had that experience where you've come through something and you go, I am clearly not who I used to be? You know you're changed at depth. You know you are. You know that inside of you. And in that moment, that's that spark, that revelation. It's that movement in consciousness, and the light begins to reveal itself. And in that moment, your consciousness is expanded. And in that expansion, everything that was held in that structure falls away, and you become more than you've ever been before. And it's a powerful, powerful happening. Everyone is given that opportunity to expand. What distinguishes people who take the path from those who don't is the willingness to let something new be born in us. We're trying to grow, we want to grow our ministry, and we have to let something new be born in us. It's not going to look like it's always looked. It's not going to be what it's always been. We can't remain the same and change, right? Charles Fillmore would ask, I have a slide for this, Dave's doing a great job trying to follow me on my slides today. Charles Fillmore would walk up to you and say, how are you using spiritual principles to demonstrate in your life? Well, how are you using your faith to create your life and circumstances? That's what he would ask you. It's not good morning, hello, how are you? So how are you using your faith to create something in your life, right? And it's this first stage of awakening. There's another slide here. It's in this first stage of awakening that that spark of your spirit has to be ceaselessly invoked and loved, like the prayer for the train set, right? And it's essential that you acquire a spiritual practice of prayer, like for the train set. It's the same thing. There's an enthusiasm, and there's an inspiration, and there's a hope and a faith that what you're holding in consciousness will show up. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not yet seen, right? But in this first stage of awakening, you're sensing it, you're knowing it, and you're developing a spiritual practice, and it's essential to acquire a spiritual practice to bring it into being. Now, one of the great ways that helps, every child understands this, to develop and cultivate this faith is with hope. That's why faith and hope are tied together. And this season during Advent, I want us to work on developing bold hope. Bold hope. And one of my favorite affirmations for doing that is, it is my greatest hope that, and then you fill in the sentence with what your greatest hope is. And it's so subtle and it's so easy. And yet I find that when I say that, I create whatever's at the end of the sentence pretty quickly, pretty easily, pretty effortlessly. Oh, it's my greatest hope that whatever happens. It's my greatest hope that we grow the ministry. It's my greatest hope that all of you feel loved and cherished here as part of this community. It's my greatest hope that we get this message to more people in our Auburn community. It's my greatest hope that there's a full sanctuary. Not because I need more people to listen, but that we make an impact in the community. It is my greatest hope that. This attitude of hope says that, and this is for Jesse, this attitude of hope that says, regardless of the situation, regardless of how many obstacles may currently be in my path, I am still going to boldly hope and believe that things will turn for good. I'm not going to be afraid to boldly hope for what I want for my life. We're not going to be afraid to boldly hope what we want for this spiritual community. Hope is an attitude that admits you may not have a clue. True. You may not have a clue as to how to do things or how things are going to work out, but you still have hope that the situation will turn for good. Ultimately, it turns for good. And in the mysticism of the Christ Spirit, how it works, where you walk across the street and you put a flyer on a bulletin board and it drops you into the midst of an experience, how can you not have hope and faith and understanding that the Spirit of God is at work in every one of our lives right now today? It is. So, bold hope, and it's my greatest hope. And the last slide, which I'll close with, is how to live in that hope that I think about my brother and I did with the train set. I think about everything that's going on in all of our lives and in our world. And so we want to fill ourselves with excitement. You can't see this picture very well, but it's presents wrapped in gold with shimmering light around them because it's a prized possession, your faith. Fill yourself with excitement. Expect good to be poured out upon you. Can you see that and feel that for your life and circumstances? Make room for the rebirth of the Christ consciousness, which is the greatest thing ever. And rest assured that you will receive the most prized gift of all, that awakening to who you are, the truth of who you are, and your capacity and ability to live it successfully. So there you are. God bless you. This morning we want to give thanks for the tremendous community that we are, and we have a work ahead of us now, don't we? With our young person, and we'll up for the task. We'll step up to it. So let's take that all into prayer. And I was looking at Christmas hymns for what we're going to be singing in the coming weeks, and I came across a reading that was written by James Dillett Freeman, who also wrote the Prayer for Protection. And so I wanted to begin our prayer time with his words that's called, "Make me a blessing, Lord." Because each one of us now has an opportunity to expand the consciousness of who we are and to become a blessing. So let's take a deep breath in and center ourselves in love, unconditional love in this community. Love that supports Gina, love that supports Carolyn, love that supports Jesse, love that supports Margaret Main's family, love that supports right now that we are being called to live compassion, to live understanding, to live encouragement, to live wisdom and guidance. James Dillett Freeman says, "Make me a blessing, Lord. Help me to help those needing help, to be a blessing to my fellow men and women. Instruct me when to speak and when to hold my speech, when to be bold in giving and when to withhold. And if I have not strength enough, then give me strength. Lord, make me tough with my own self, but tender toward all others. Let there be outpoured on me the gentleness to bless all who have need of gentleness. Give me a word, a touch to fill the lonely life, faith for the ill, and courage to keep hearts up, though my own is feeling just as low. When men have bitter things to meet and would accept defeat, then let me lift their eyes to see the vision of thy victory. Help me to help. Help me to give. Help me to give the wisdom and the will to live. Make me a blessing, Lord. Help me to help those needing help." So it's with compassion in our hearts that we just breathe that this morning. Let that season of light that Advent is move into your mind, breathe it into your mind, your brain. Let it cascade over your face, your neck, and then let it fill your heart with love. Breathe in love in through your heart and exhale out anything that's less than the best. Breathe in love. Exhale stress. Breathe in love. Exhale fear. Breathe in love. Exhale any illness, any uncomfortableness in your body. Let yourself become the light being that you are. And then be open and receptive to hear that voice, the voice of God within you, when it guides you. When that glimpse, that hunch, that subtle nudge comes, be still and know. There is a perfect path of peace for you. See yourself stepping out on it, walking on a path that's light-filled. The light's above you, around you, behind you. It warms your body. This path is peace for your life. This path is love for your life. This path is courage and strength. And you walk boldly forward. As we think about our loved ones, we invite them to join us on the path, like small children whose hands you hold as you walk along. That hand holding is a symbol of connection, safety, trust, faith. As a spiritual community, we hold hands and walk forward together in compassion, understanding, encouragement, joy, love. We bless all the names on our Christmas tree, for those we're remembering and holding in our hearts this Christmas season. We bless all the names in our prayer chest. Bless each one of you here. Your life is good because God is good. God within you is good. And in faith, you learn to walk that faith boldly. Your hopes, your dreams, they're all there in spirit. Make me a blessing, Lord. Help me to help those needing help. Make me a blessing, Lord. Let's affirm it. Make me a blessing, Lord. Help me to help those in need. Together. Help me to help those in need. And for this time of letting ourselves be empowered with an expanding universal Christ consciousness, with an expansion of love and compassion, we are grateful. And we do go forward boldly, filled with hope, filled with faith, filled with love. And so it is. Together we all say, Amen.